Good morning, students. Let's go through the rest part of EVO, 4th unit. Everything I need to know, I learned in the forest. Now, I am going to bring something remarkable things that into your memory about what we learned in our previous class. Only the other day, we got to see how Vandana Shiva took her participation in the Chipko movement without being forced. Thus, Vandana Shiva, after being affected by the actions of women of Garhwal, one who decided to defend the forests against the willing of cutting off the trees in the forest by the government officials, Vandana Shiva got impressed. These actions of the women of Garhwal impacted a lot on the mind of our Vandana Shiva. So, she stepped into this movement called Chipko. She willingly came forward to take her participation in this Chipko movement as a volunteer. She passed many days doing padayatras towards the pilgrimages or the holy places. Whenever she got the leisure time, she did her best to use of these days. While she was on her way towards the holy places, she did something better towards defending of the forest. She involved in many actions in carrying out the documentation of the deforestation where logging had happened, and the work of the forest activists was also taken into her consideration, and the spreading of the message of the Chipko movement was also documented by our Vandana Shiva when she was on her way towards the pilgrimages or holy places. Later on, we came to know about one of the impressive or attracted Chipko movements which fascinated the attention of our Vandana Shiva. This impressive Chipko movement happened in the Himalayan village called it as Advani in 1977. In this village, there was a woman called Bachni Devi, one who led a resistance or fight against her whole husband, who got the contract of cutting the trees in the forest. With the intention of cutting trees, the officials arrived at the forest. When they came in, what happened is that all the women held up their lighted lanterns above their head in the form of protection, though it was a broad light. It symbolizes that this is how they protested against the officials who arrived at the forest. After having seen these actions by the group of women, the forester asked them why were they doing so. And those women replied him, saying that all of them had come there only to teach him of forestry. I told you people what forestry is in our previous class. It's the science of planting and taking care of the plants in the forest. It's called forestry. On receiving those words from the group of women, the forester scolded them, saying that they were the foolish women, one who lacked sense. How could one of them stop felling the trees by the people, one who knew the value of the forest? Which means, what was it right to tell those group of women is that they were aware of the value of the forest. How could one of the women among them stop the foresters or loggers cutting those trees in the forest? And he further asked those women a question: do they know the value of the forest? And later he gave them an answer for his own question, saying that those trees of the forest produce profit, resin and timber as well. In response to the forester's question and his reply, the woman sang a song in a group which followed the answer of the forester, which said like this: what do the forest bear? And this woman gave the forester an answer, though it was a song. The trees produce soil, water and a pure air. And again we came across the same word in the third line too: soil, water and pure air. And we have to sustain the earth and all that she bears. Which means we the people of this earth have the responsibility upon our shoulder to provide enough what is needed to the living beings, for the existence is called sustain. We have to sustain the earth, what this earth needs. And this is all what the forest produces. And later we moved on to the next concept, beyond monoculture, where Indians cultivated the habit of farming their land once in a year. This is a practice of growing only one type of crop in a year. Beyond this habit of growing only one crop in a year, Vandana Shiva started thinking of growing various types of crops on our field. This is all about the beyond the monocultures. She, which means Vandana Shiva, learned many lessons about biodiversity and diversity-based living economies only from the Chipko movement. After getting participated in the Chipko movement with the women of Garhwal, she got to know many things about the diversity. I told you people the meaning of this word diversity, where varieties of plants and living organisms live their life in a forest where they can maintain a balanced life or an environment is called biodiversity. Based on this biodiversity, we the people can make use of efficient use of the available sources of the forests. That's what we call living economies. In a forest, we can get the most what we want. In this way, we can efficiently make use of the things that are available in the forest. That's what we call living economies. She learned about these things, how to make use of the available things in the forest and the biodiversity as well. These lessons were learned by our Vandana Shiva directly from the Chipko movement. Since then, protecting both biodiversity and the biodiversity based living economies became one of our mission or aim in our lives. It was turned into one of the life's mission of our Vandana Shiva. And later, we the readers of this lesson were introduced one of the books of Vandana Shiva entitled Monoculture, Cultures of the Mind, in which she described about the failure to understand biodiversity. We the people today are unable to understand biodiversity and its functions. Its role is very vital. The role that is played by biodiversity today is very significant. But we fail to understand the biodiversity and its functions. This is at the root of impoverishment of nature and the culture as well. Nowadays, what we get to see is that the nature and the culture of India have become very poor. At the bottom of this impoverishment of our Indian culture and nature as well, our inability of understanding diversity or biodiversity that lies at the root of the impoverishment of nature and culture. We already came to know the fact that many lessons were learnt by Vandana Shiva about diversity only in the forests of Himalaya. The knowledge that she borrowed from the forests of Himalaya were transferred to the protection of biodiversity on our farms. She bought a bit of land for conducting exhibition and or a demonstration and a training as well. On the farm of Vandana Shiva and the participant of the Northern Farm, the knowledge that Vandana Shiva gained above was transformed into the protection of biodiversity. She invested all her knowledge only to protect the biodiversity, where all the living organisms, including animals and plants, can make a balanced life in an environment. She started accumulating seeds directly from the farmers' fields, and later she realized the fact that she needed or required a form for demonstration and the forming as well. After finding the necessity of the establishment of a form for the demonstration, she started a form, called it as Navadanya form, in the year of 1994 in the Doon Valley, situated at the lower elevation of Himalayan region of Uttarakhand state. This is the place where this Navadanya form was situated. On this Navadanya form, the participants and Vandana Shiva started conserving or saving seeds, and later they grew up 630 varieties of rice, 150 varieties of weeds, and hundreds of other species as well. They made many practices or exercises, and they rise to a higher position of the biodiversity, intensive form of farming, where they could grow what we call grow or produce as much food as possible. That's what we call intensive farming. She produced more food and nutrition per hectare. And this is how saving of the biodiversity on the Navadanya farm thus became one of the answer for the food and nutrition crisis that we face today. Navadanya farm turning into one of the movement later only for the saving of or protecting of the biodiversity and organic form that our Vandana Shiva started in 1987 is still spreading all across India. All of them worked together with the farmers to establish more than 100 community seeds banks where the farmers could get the seeds in the banks all across the India. At every nooks and corners of India, these seeds banks were made available. They saved more than 3,000 varieties of rice. And Vandana Shiva and participants helped farmers in making a transition from fossil fuel and chemical based monocultures towards the biodiverse ecological systems that is developed by the sun and the soil. Thus, biodiversity had become one of the teacher of abundance, freedom, cooperation, and the mutual giving as well. This is how she learned many lessons from the biodiversity, especially in the region of Himalaya. And here, let's make a move on to the rights of nature on the global stage. Here, what do we come across is that it's we the people of this world have many rights in us to climb ourselves. Here, in terms of the nature, it can also have many rights in it. It can climb of having rights in it on the global stage. Globally, the nature as as it is a teacher of the human being. It has many rights in it. It's legally, this nature can legally claim to have these rights. That's what we call rights of nature, where on a global stage. Let's make a move from here, where the first line of this rights of nature begins. When nature is a teacher, we already came to know the fact in our previous class that nature became one of the teachers to our Vandana Shiva after having learned many lessons from her. Which means she got to know many lessons about diversity and biodiversity living economies from the Himalayan forests. Thus, the nature becomes one of the teachers. It preaches many lessons to our Vandana Shiva. She has learned many lessons from the nature itself. Thus, nature becomes one of the teachers to our Vandana Shiva after having learned many lessons from it, from her. And here, nature is compared to the woman. We need to co-create with her. Here, we find ourselves in the position to go or move with the nature when she becomes a teacher. When the nature teaches us many lessons about the biodiversity and biodiversity living economies, we put ourselves in a position to go or move ourselves with the nature. That's what we call co-create. In a sense, we need to go together with the nature. That's what we call go together. With the word co-create, I mean to say, what I mean to say is that when we start following many things after having learned many lessons from the nature, we need to lead our life with the nature. We need to be aware the fact that we can't lead our life without the nature. That's how we require to find ourselves with the nature. That's what we call the co-create. We need to take ourselves forward. We need to go ahead with the nature itself. We recognize our agency and our rights as well. We the people recognize or start identifying the service given by the nature. When the nature becomes a teacher, when we learn many lessons from the nature, we the people start identifying her services. That's what we call agency. The services, this is the service that is done by the nature to the human being. It provides us, which means nature provides us many things to the human beings. We are the beneficiaries of the nature. So, she gives us many services to the human being, and we the people start identifying her service and her rights as well. As we have many rights to climb ourselves with, she has many rights in her to climb. That's why it's significant that Ecuador has recognized the rights of nature in its constitution. And here, what is Vandana Shiva trying to tell her readers is that it is the most significant or important to notice that one of the countries of South America called Ecuador that recognized the rights of nature for the first time in its constitution. It's a legal written document which contains many things about the forming of a government. This is all about the constitution. And in the constitution of this country, Ecuador, the people or citizens of Ecuador country identified the rights of nature, which means the citizens of Ecuador gave more importance or emphasis at the rights of nature as they have. So, it's the important lies over here, that is when the Ecuador identified the rights of nature in its own constitution. In April 2011, the United Nations General Assembly, inspired by the Constitution of Ecuador, and here United Nations General Assembly, which is a legislature of UN, United Nations, and this United Nations General Assembly got an inspiration from the deed of or from the work of Ecuador country when it recognized the rights of nature. The action of Ecuador inspired United Nations General Assembly in 2011 April. This is how, in this way, United Nations General Assembly was influenced a lot after having seen the adaptation of the rights of nature in its constitution by the Ecuador country, which is one of the country of South America, and Universal Declaration of the Rights of Mother Earth, initiated by Bolivia. And here, and what we further get to see is that the Universal Declaration has been made by Bolivia. And here, this Universal Declaration is all about the declaration which can pave a way to all the countries to apply something themselves or adopt themselves. This Universal Declaration has been made by Bolivia about the rights of Mother Earth. Here, as we have seen the Ecuador country about its recognition of the rights of nature, it is followed by the another thing is followed by the country of Bolivia. What it does is that it has made a universal declaration about the rights of Mother Earth. It It is first introduced by the country called it Bolivia. And these two statements are very important in your upcoming examination for 1 mark. You will probably be asked these questions in your upcoming examination for 1 mark. Organized a conference here, United Nations General Assembly conducted a conference which means a formal meeting for the deliberations, for the discussions. That's what we call a conference. Conference on harmony with nature as a part of Earth Day celebrations. On the part of Earth Day celebrations, United Nations General Assembly organized one of the formal meeting on the topic of on harmony or agreement with the nature. Today, we the people start exploiting the nature by cutting the trees in the forest to get benefited from the forest due to the industrialization, globalization and privatization as well. Human beings start demolishing the forest. So, the forest around us disappear. So, United Nations General Assembly organized one of the formal meeting on the topic of on harmony with nature, which means an harmony in a sense is an agreement that we should make with the nature. We can't live our life without nature. We need to go ahead with the nature only. Then only we can lead our life in a way we desire our life to be. As a part of Earth celebration, Earth Day celebrations, and this conference was held as a part of the Earth Day celebrations. And in this conference, much of the the ways to transform systems. There were many deliberations among the participants of the conference. They discussed and put their arguments in front of themselves, and the deliberations that they had ever among themselves were all about the domination of people over the nature, which means the meaning associated with the word domination is that it is an exercise of power with the people. Start exercising our power on other living creatures on this earth. And in this way, what Madhana Shiva trying to tell our readers is that the discussions which were the part of the conference were all about the domination of the people over the nature. Since many years, it had been seen or obvious by us that over the nature, human beings were exploiting. They did so much harm to the nature to get the advantage for the sake of their welfare, the people were exploiting the nature using their power or by exercising their power over this nature. This is what we call the domination of people over the nature and men over women. Since the primitive ages, it's seen that men in the society were more dominant than the women. Women were subjected to the exploitation by the group of men in the society. So, women were made to go to the corner of a house, which means she was not allowed even to go out of her home in the primitive ages. But the scenario has completely been changed nowadays. And this happened only in the primitive ages about the domination of the man over the woman and rich over poor. The elite people of the society are rich people, one who possess treasure or money in the form of a gold or the money. They exploit these poor people by using them into unused systems based on partnership. And here, we the people need to go with a partnership. And here, so far we have discussed about, we have seen about the domination of the human beings over the nature and the men over the women and all about the rich over the poor. And this needs to be turned into a new system where we can live our lives having partnership among the people. And here, what do we need to do is that we need to have co-partnership, cooperative relationship among the people to lead our lives in a manner where we want our lives to be. Let's make a move on to another slide. Here, the UN Secretary General's report, Harmony with Nature, issued in conjunction with the conference, elaborates on the importance of reconnecting with the nature. The UN Secretary, and here the Secretary General of UN, that is UN Secretary General. Secretary General refers to the Chief Administrative Officer of United States of America. In one of the report of the Secretary General of United States of America, what is reported in the Secretary General's report is that harmony with nature, which means we need to agree or admit with the nature, where we must go ourselves with the nature ahead to lead our lives. Issued in conjunction with the conference, this is officially brought out. Here, the topic of harmony with the nature is officially brought out in the conference. And as we have witnessed so far about the conference which was held by United Nations General Assembly, here what was this conference all about is that harmony with the nature, and this topic is officially brought out in front of the participants in conjunction with the conference, which means this connects with the conference. This issue is connected with the conference. Much of the deliberations are all about the harmony with the nature. Elaborates on the importance of reconnecting with the nature. It describes, the conference describes on the importance of reconnecting with the nature. And here, the situation that we are in today necessitates the human beings to go all along with the nature. We need to reconnect with the nature. And this is all about the things that the conference revolves around. Ultimately, environmentally destructive behavior is the result of a failure to recognize. Ultimately or finally, we the people have destructive tendency or behavior towards our environment which we live our life in. And this tendency or behavior which is very destructive towards nature becomes the result where we can fail to recognize the fact that human beings are an inseparable part of the nature. I told you people earlier that we can't live our life without the nature. We need to go or together with the nature only. Human beings can't live their life being apart from this nature. So, we must find ourselves in a position where we can lead our life happily with the nature only. So, we are an inseparable part of the nature and we can't damage it without severely damaging ourselves. It is for sure that we can't damage the nature without being severely damaged ourselves. Before doing anything wrong in the nature, we will put ourselves in a very destructive position. Before doing anything which will be very harmful to the nature, the living organism, one who lives their life in the nature, including ourselves, will put ourselves in a danger position. So, we can't do anything to the nature without severely damaging ourselves. Later, Vandana Shiva takes us onto the separatism, the concept of separatism, where we can find out a social system in which all the facilities are provided separately from one and another. Here, the people start living their life apart. This is what we call separatism. This concept of separatism that existed in African countries on the basis of color complexion. Separatism is indeed at the root of disharmony. This is separatism, the concept of separatism that exists or lies at the root of disharmony, where people lack the harmony. Among the people, we can't find the harmony where they can live their life cooperatively. So, we can face the problem of lacking of harmony in us. This leads us to the separatism among the people. When we lack the harmony among all of us, takes us to the separatism with the nature, especially with the nature. When we start living our life apart from the nature, what becomes inevitable in the midst of nature and the human beings is that the concept of separatism comes into presence in between the nature and the human beings, and violence against nature and people. This is separatism that comes into presence when we have a lack of harmony among all of us and violence against the nature, and we the people, due to get the advantage from the nature, we start exploiting it by cutting the trees. To get benefited from the nature, we do some awful things to the nature. Violence activities have been frequently done against the nature and the people as well. In the society, we can see some people getting involved in a violence against each other. This activity of the people is at the root of disharmony, where they lack harmony or coordination. As a prominent or important South African environmentalist, Cormac Cullinan points out, here we are introduced one of the greater environmentalists, Cormac Cullinan. He explains apartheid means separateness. He introduces one of the term, that is apartheid, which means separateness, being separated from the nature and the people. And this concept, apartheid, that reveals all about the separateness. And I told you people earlier that this is separateness that existed in the countries of Africa, where the people exploited the other group of people based on the color that they add on their physique. The world joined the anti-apartheid movement to end the violent separation of people on the basis of color. And here, the whole world joined together in an anti-apartheid movement, which means anti-nations against this against apartheid movement. Which means here, I told you people earlier that in the majority of the countries of Africa, the people followed this apartheid or separatism among themselves. But the whole world joined their hands together to put an end to this apartheid or separatism. Here, anti-nations against this apartheid or separatism. To end the violent separation of people, there was a system where people kept other people apart from them based on the color. This violent system appeared in the countries of Africa. So, with the intention of bringing an end to this system, the whole world joined its hand to bring an end to this violent separation of the people on the basis of the color that they have added on their physique. Apartheid in South Africa was put behind us. Currently, there is no place at all in South Africa where they can follow this system of separatism. We can find no place in South Africa where they follow this system of separatism. Nowhere we can find this separatism in South Africa. Today, we need to overcome the wider and deeper apartheid and eco-apartheid based on the illusion of separateness of humans from nature in our minds and lives. Today, we live our life having the concept in our mind that we have an illusion in our mind, the separateness of the human beings from the nature is kept in our mind all alive, and we the people still believe that we are apart from the nature after exploiting the nature. Here today we are in a position to come out or overcome from a wider and deeper apartheid. In us, we have some notions in us. That is, we start living our life apart from the nature. This is kept in us all alive. This notion of being separated from the nature should be kept far away from us. So, in this way, we need to overcome or come out from this wider or deeper apartheid which we keep in us very deeply. And eco-apartheid based on the illusion. And here also, not only this separatism exists among the people, it also shows its presence in the nature too, where the people start living their life apart from the nature. It is an eco-apartheid, where the people start living their life away from the nature. This is what we call an eco-apartheid based on the illusion. And here we keep a notion in us. It is an illusion or a fancy of separateness of humans from nature. What do we keep in us is that the separateness of the human beings from the nature in our minds and lives. In our lives and minds as well, we have kept some notions in our mind that we live our life away from the nature. This needs to be kept away from all of us. This is the inevitable necessity to this is an inevitable necessity to keep ourselves in a position where we can start living our life in the nature. So we need to co-create or live our life together or with the nature. Dear students, let us stop over here. Let's make a continuation. Make a continuation in the very next class. Thank you, Monica.